It is day 66 of the US-Iran war, and we begin with one number, 61%. That is the share of Americans who now say using military force against Iran was a mistake. It places this war among the most unpopular of the modern era. Yet Washington has told Congress the war is, for legal purposes, terminated. The Trump administration is running out the clock on the War Powers Resolution, whose 60-day deadline fell on May 1st, by arguing that an open-ended ceasefire pauses the need for congressional approval, even while the naval blockade continues. At the same time, the United States has announced the withdrawal of 5,000 troops from Germany in what is seen as a punishment of a NATO ally. Global oil prices have briefly crossed $126 a barrel, and the World Bank warns that energy costs could rise 24% this year. So tonight we ask, is this a real de-escalation or just a strategic pause? And what does it mean for international law, NATO unity, and the global economy? All these questions and more are put to my panel on All 24 News Special. Hello there and welcome to All 24 News Special with me, Karim Zachary. And before we bring in our guest, let's step back and follow this report by our own Sofyan Kanturi, and then we get back to the discussion.
Tensions between Washington and Tehran intensified as both sides exchanged sharp statements over Iran's nuclear program and the future of ongoing negotiations, raising fresh doubts about the prospects for a diplomatic breakthrough. Iran said the United States now limited room to maneuver amid growing pressure surrounding the talks.
The warning from Iran regarding the blockade directed at the Pentagon, the shift in tone from China, Russia, and Europe toward Washington, President Donald Trump's backtracking message to Congress, and Iran's acceptance of negotiation conditions, all of this means one thing: Trump must choose between an impossible operation or a bad deal with Iran.
Meanwhile, President Trump struck a more confrontational tone, warning a potential resumption of military action and confirming that Washington would soon review Tehran's latest proposal.
Doing very well with regard to Iran. Again, they want to make a deal. They're decimated. They're having a hard time figuring out who their leader is. They don't know who their leader is because their leader is gone. Their former leader, Khomeini. But we'll see.
The exchange highlights the widening gap between the two sides as diplomacy faces mounting challenges. With both rhetoric and stakes raising, the path toward a renewed agreement appears increasingly uncertain.
And to examine the legal, strategic, economic, and human dimensions of this conflict, we are joined tonight by four distinguished analysts. In Rotterdam is Mr. Massimiliano D'Amore, geopolitical analyst focused on NATO and transatlantic tensions. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation.
You're most welcome, and the pleasure is ours. Also in Paranaíba is, from Brazil, is Mr. Victor Bruno, geopolitics and risk consultant, tracking how the Global South is recalibrating with us in the show. Great to see you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And in Belgrade is Ms. Yelena Novakov, a political analyst with a critical perspective on international law and great power politics. It's a pleasure to have you with us on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And let me start the debate with you, Mr. Massimiliano D'Amore. Pakistan has delivered Iran's latest 14-point proposal to Washington. Donald Trump, however, called it unacceptable and says the blockade will remain. Tehran, for its part, is saying it will not negotiate under siege. Now, if we come to look at it and we ask this question, is this a real path to peace or just a tactical pause to let perhaps economic pressure do the work?
Yeah, I would say this is definitely a tactical pause. I see a dead end for this negotiation. There is a sort of structural incompatibility between the two parties. From one hand, Iran wants to use the Strait of Hormuz as a bargaining chip, wanting to defer the nuclear talks for the next round. On the other hand, President Donald Trump is not willing to lift the naval blockade without securing any kind of restrictions on the nuclear dossier. Then we need to factor in the real deal breaker of this negotiation, which is Lebanon. Indeed, from my end, this is a clearly trapwire. Iran has been able to design this trapwire in order to move the decision-making from United States to Israel. The Lebanese front is very far to an end. Indeed, right now, Israel is continuing its civil plow operation, creating a sort of buffer zone that covers 6% of the Lebanese territory. The Israeli Minister of Defense Katz, as well as the IDF General Milo, have established that this is a war of attrition and it will last for weeks. So as long as both parties are exchanging kinetic actions and so are continuously violating the ceasefire, we won't see an end to these negotiations soon.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me bring in Mr. Victor Bruno to the conversation. Mr. Bruno, the war is actually driving up energy prices, and the entire world is actually feeling that shock. Fertilizers are infected as well, and food prices even. Perhaps the hardest hit are in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Now, is this accelerating a shift away from the Western-led order because of this? And are global South countries now hedging more aggressively against Washington's choices? How do you see it?
Undoubtedly so. Of course, I think this war is, for a lack of a better term, or perhaps a more diplomatic term, it's a disaster for the United States. Michael Lind, a scholar, an American scholar, a few years ago, released a book in which he argued that from a political and economic aspect, the U.S. history can be divided into three republics. We are living at the end of the Third American Republic, the one that begins at the end of World War II and lasts until the end of the unipolar moment that lasted from 1991 to perhaps 2016, 2017, when China effectively becomes a world power. So, and the big difference right now is that during the whole of the Third American Republic, America had economic, industrial, and cultural capitals. Beginning from the 80s to now, America effectively becomes a financial economy, not an industrial economy. And it puzzles me, why did Trump choose to begin this war right now, where America has trillions of dollars in foreign debt, a crippling industrial basis. He was elected both in 2016 and now 2 years ago because the American blue collar worker was down and out, basically, and he perhaps very puzzling chooses to strike, if not America's biggest enemy, but a very symbolic target, and it fails. This war has been a failure. There's no other way to put it, and it causes an horrible people all over the world, as you just said. So my point is that America can't win this war, and it's hurting everyone here in Latin America. For instance, I'm in Brazil. This year's soy harvest can't be moved. It has not been moved, not by a big factor, because you don't have diesel to run the ships that will export our production. And so likewise, in whole parts of the world, in vast areas of the world, including Africa. So I believe that in countries, especially in mid-income countries like Brazil, like Kazakhstan, like Peru, where China just built a 2 billion mega port in the coast of the Pacific, I think it's very advisable that, because on the strength of these late empire misadventures that America keeps getting itself into, I think that secondary powers like Brazil, like Kazakhstan, like Iran, like Peru, Iran, of course, now is on its way to become a great power. I think it's very advisable that they apply at least multi-vectorial systems, diplomatic systems for their foreign politics, and think about that very special big word, the national interest. It's a key aspect of things as they stand right now. And perhaps that problem is even more acute to Western countries, culturally Western countries, because standing, or at least turning away from America has been so far seen almost as a form of self-betrayal to the system. So I believe, yes, we are in a push away from Washington, perhaps away from America, or at least we are right now witnessing a wake-up call for mid-income powers all over the world. As Kissinger used to say, being an enemy of the United States is a problem, being a friend is perhaps fatal. So I think this phrase is very, very poignant for the moment we are experiencing right now.
Thank you for that insight. Let me now turn to Ms. Yelena Novakov. Yelena, the U.S. is sanctioning Iran and its partners while still approving billions in arms sales and enforcing a blockade. If we come to look at it, especially with the global South perspective, they wouldn't see this fair and some kind of selective, let's say, doctrine to actually sanction some people while the others are just, go unpunished for whatever they do. So is this really a rules-based order, or one where rules are applied selectively to punish some and arm others?
I don't think there are many people outside the West who are only now learning that justice is applied selectively and only to benefit those in power in richer countries. But I think there are several important things that, first, the genocide in Gaza and every event that followed, including now the war in Iran, have exposed. The first thing being that, as absurd as this sounds, a lot of people in the West and beyond have now been able to put the faces to those numbers of victims and understand that these are real people, real men, women, and children who are being killed in these illegal wars to benefit different Western and other powers who are not Western, including Israel. Number two would be that many European countries are now seeing that they are not safe. Prior to this, there was this established order that protected them because they were allied, quote unquote, correctly, right? And now it took only one man to show that is in fact not true. And thirdly, this is specifically with the war in Iran, it shows that there are still limits to military superiority, right? If you have strategic positioning and you're effectively winning a PR war against the world's biggest superpower, that will reflect in how this deal will be achieved, whether it's now or in a few weeks. Now, Iran's goal with this new latest offer that is absolutely maximalist is to bargain. They understand that this offer is humiliating for America. They understand that it will probably be rejected because if Trump does accept it, it's effectively capitulating to Iran and the regime he tried to overthrow. But I think approaching this potential deal in this way will give Iran more leverage, and it would certainly give them the right momentum to use this upper hand that they now have, given the control of the state of the Strait of Hormuz.
Thank you indeed. Now, let me bring back Mr. Massimiliano to the conversation. Mr. Massimiliano D'Amore, the war powers deadline has actually passed. The administration or the US administration is saying the ceasefire pauses the clock, but legal experts reject that view. So if a president declare a war being terminated while the blockade continues, what kind of precedent does that set, and what message does it send, for example, to European capitals?
Yes, indeed. So on May the 1st, officially the wartime clock has expired. And as of now, President Trump and Secretary Access are operating into a gray zone. As you mentioned before, lots of scholars and legal specialists have indicated the impossibility of declaring an operation complete when there's an active naval blockade and also clearance mines operations. Therefore, this is a big signal for European countries. The Trump administration is showcasing this kind of narrative where they are capable of delegitimizing any sort of internal security check. Therefore, the Trump administration has created this sort of narrative where they are able to initiate, escalate, and a war bypassing the approval of the Congress. Therefore, this is actually really detrimental in terms of signaling for European countries. It contributes to increase the already high reluctancy of European countries, but don't feel this war as a NATO war, and so we don't want to be dragged into this conflict. Also, I think that to this extent, we need to make a distinction between the tactical dimension and the strategic one. Indeed, on the tactical side, the United States has collected various victories, being able to destroy 125 Iranian vessels, killing more than 250 senior IRGC officials, hitting more than 30,000 targets, and so on. But now we are trying to focus on the strategic dimension. Now, a lot of European countries are starting to grasp the weakening of the American empire, and we need to try to bypass the Congress approval with these loopholes is the definitive and prime example of this tendency, of this weakening of the empire. Yeah.
Perfect. Now let me turn to Victor Bruno. Mr. Bruno, amidst all this mess, who do you think is appearing to be benefiting from it? Is it China, Russia? While the US is shifting military assets away from the Indo-Pacific, that is, And is the real geopolitical contest now between a stretched United States and a patient Sino-Russian partnership?
Well, I think there's no doubt that China and Russia are the real winners of this war, along with, of course, Iran, because it's very important to remember. I see lots of analysts saying, well, Iran is hurting, Iran is this, Iran is going through that. But the fact of the matter is that Iran just has to survive, no matter how. It's easier for them than it is for America to actually beat them, because this is an existential war. But um, going back to your question, we talk a lot about Brent prices, but let's take a look at Euro oil. Euro crude is now trading at $112 a barrel. That's a 103% raise from 2 months ago. 2 months ago, on the eve of the war, the Euro's crude was trading at $55, right? So there's no question that regarding leverage, Russia right now is on the rise. They have leverage. It's not a wonder that just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Ukraine struck the Primorsk terminal near Finland, a vital terminal, a vital oil terminal for Russia. And in the light of that fact, in the light that euros are double the price, that Europe's scrambling for other energy sources. Right now, Azerbaijan is a vital node to Europe, and I can talk and I can go through chapter and verse on that. I find it very hard to accept that by September 2027, that September of next year, I'm sorry, by the September of next year, Europe will follow through its ban on Russian oil and gas. I find it very hard to believe because they just don't have anywhere else to go. Every place else, everywhere else is just too difficult. For instance, Azerbaijan. If Europe really falls through the ban and it falls on Azerbaijan to supply Europe with energy, they'll have to move that gas and oil through Turkey, and that will build lots of leverage for Turkey on Europe and on Israel, because these are two very contentious countries. Now, in regard to China, well, I think this is the very, very biggest winner of all, because all they have to do is being a reliable partner, and they just spent a whole decade crisscrossing Central Asia with railways and distribution centers and storage centers. And now, just 2 days ago, they sent the biggest signal that the world should see, that the world could see, which was telling oil-producing countries to disregard U.S. sanctions. They are basically saying, well, you know how America is. They don't matter. Don't care about them. Just trust us. Well, if you can say that, that means that you have a big wherewithal. And so they are really the two biggest winners. And I would say that beginning now, over the last, and from now to the next 10 to 20 years, we should be seeing a power transition from the west to the east. So China, Moscow, Beijing, Moscow, perhaps Tehran, and other mid-income powers in Asia, Central Asia, maybe the Near East, will become more important and will have more power and say in relation to the political West.
And now let me get back to Yelena Novakov. Yelena, we see that this war has turned out to be very costly for the United States. the US has actually burned through major stockpiles when it comes to missiles and so on, especially when we speak about the bases there in the Middle East. And even rebuilding, according to experts, is going to take years. What do we understand from this, Yelena? What does it mean when the world's leading military power emerges from a limited war with its arsenal depleted and also its credibility under strain?
Right. Well, depending on how the midterms in America go, if the Republicans are able to win both the House and the Senate again, they will simply increase military spending budget, right? That they have done it previously, and they will do it again. Now, if the Democrats take one or both, there will definitely be challenges to that. However, Democrats are oftentimes saying one thing, but then will vote in favor of wars or increased military spending, etc. So basically, that is what I believe is going to happen. They're simply going to increase the military spending budget. Now, when it comes to the allies, the United States have already started losing allies in Europe, but also in the Middle East. I don't think that, for example, the UAE leaving OPEC is going to be something that's beneficial to America, despite Trump having previously criticized OPEC. What this means is that the UAE is going to open its markets to China and to India, which is definitely not going to benefit the dollar petrol, and is definitely not going to benefit the United States or their partners in Europe. And now to Europe, I don't think that those strategic alliances are going to fall apart by the end of Trump's term, unless something completely unpredictable happens. Though every country is probably going to try to make special deals or individual deals with Iran, because doing business as the entire European Union is incredibly complicated and a difficult process due to European bureaucracy. And now Iran has a lot of power here. It can divide Europe by allowing access to some countries and not allowing access to other countries. So in that sense, strategic roles of the United States and Europe are still aligned, because it doesn't work in Brussels' favor, and it doesn't work in Washington's favor for Tehran to have that kind of leverage and that kind of power of division between the Western allies, though it is Washington that started all of that.
Mm-hmm. And now, if we come to look at allies, as you mentioned, Yelena, Mr. Massimiliano D'Amore, the Pentagon is withdrawing 5,000 troops from Germany, and Reuters reports internal talk of punishing NATO allies who failed actually to support the war. According to you, is NATO now more divided than at any point in its history over the American war? Perhaps most allies are looking at it or seeing it as illegitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the term war of choice. So all the European countries, first of all, they haven't been consulted by United States prior to the start of this operation. Secondly, the war of choice perfectly describe the general sentiment in Europe. This is not a NATO task to join the United States. Also, without all the safety nets and insurance that we talked about with these legal loopholes, and therefore ability to bypass security checks. Therefore, I think that this is a pivotal moment for NATO. All the NATO partners should be very worried about the effects of this conflict. Previously, you talked about the depletion in terms of military inventory. Yesterday, I was reading the new report of the Center of Strategic Intelligence Studies, and I found some shocking estimates in terms mainly on interceptor and more specifically terminal high altitude area defense systems. Therefore, the
Well, it seems that we're having a connection issue. Let's just fix that and get back to you, Mr. Massimiliano. Now, let's speak about whose war is this. And here, let me get back to you, Victor Bruno. If we come to look at the growing concern inside the United States, is the fact that perhaps the foreign ally, Israel, is the one that is driving the bus here. So, is the United States waging a war that serves Israel's strategic interest more than its own? How do you see it?
Well, I believe that we can say for a fact that this is Israel's war because this is no news. Ever since the 1980s, you have a growing chorus of analysts who say that Israel effectively runs the White House. And saying that, that's very important to believe because the United States and the Third American Republic, the Third American Republic and Israel are joined at the hip. And Israel is America's foothold in the Middle East. Now, as Netanyahu said a few weeks ago, Israel's aim is to become a super country. That means effectively controlling all that part of the world. And as Mick Huckabee said 2 months ago, before the start of the war, if Israel can get the whole region from the Mediterranean to the Euphrates, he doesn't have a problem with that. And so that's very concerning because I believe that this war won't be settled anytime soon because it's an existential war for both Israel and Iran, right? There can be no peace between those two countries because if Iran wins, as we assume it will, if not now, 10 or 20 years from now, since all it has to do is survive, that means that it will become, if it's not already, a great power, and that means having enormous leverage over the countries in the region, which of course includes Israel. If America wins, its powers will be, Israel's powers, that is, will be expanded all over the region. It will touch North Africa. It will pit them against Turkey. So, so that will become a problem. But America, as I said in my earlier answer, doesn't have the wherewithal anymore to wage a costly war so far away from home. The supply chain is just insane. You have reports from the USS Lincoln that the sailors, the crew doesn't have chow, it doesn't have foodstuffs to eat. So that's a problem. If you think about minesweeping, America had two minesweepers. They just scrapped them. So the situation is very dire for America to wage this war. So yeah, I believe Israel pressured Trump into striking Iran. It will strike again anytime soon now, and it's not so much that it is Israel's war, but Israel is and America are joined at the hip.
Hmm. What about you, Yelena Novakov? Would you agree with these comments that Israel and the United States are joined at the hip? And what does that mean for American strategic autonomy if it is waging a war for the interest of its ally?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. And it's not just America. Israel is expanding its horizons to different continents as well. Just recently, Serbia and Israel signed a strategic partnership agreement. So, and the two countries have been growing closer. For a while now. So, in practical terms, what that means is that Israel will have its own agenda at the forefront in Washington. It will have its own agenda in a very unstable country that is still very influential regionally. So it will have its agenda in Europe, and then it will have its agenda in the Middle East and the Levant. Now we can argue, and I think it would be fair to question whether the United States has at all acted on its own when it comes to the Middle East since 1967. Of course, um, there are things that are becoming more and more obvious now, but whether the fact that the U.S. and Israel have been allies and such close allies for so long is certainly questionable, and not only morally but also financially in terms of how much is being taken away from American citizens because they are funding wars across the world that have nothing to do with them, and they have no interest in it, nor are they gaining anything from it.
Hmm.
But also, um, yes, I think Israel is not stopping. It's only expanding. Now it lacks an ally in Africa, so that's potentially the next spot to go.
Hmm. But then, Yelena Novakov, when we come to look at the law, the politics, there is some kind of hypocrisy there. Iran has actually filed war crimes claims, and U.S.-based scholars have called the strikes a clear violation of the UN Charter. Now, what does this do to the credibility of international law, according to you, Yelena? And is it perhaps still a shield for the weak, or perhaps increasingly a weapon for the strong?
Um, there have been many instances just in the past 30 years of huge international global organizations that are supposed to be there to ensure equality and equal access and protection. Um, One would be the UN, the other one would be the ICC. Now, the UN, one good example with the UN failing to do anything would be the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. Now, whether that was ethical or justifiable is a discussion for a different time. However, that attack was illegal, and the UN didn't do anything because effectively it couldn't do anything. There are many problems with the Security Council and the right to veto. Removing that would solve a lot of problems. It would solve the issue of efficiency within the Security Council. However, it would also bring many other concerns to the forefront as well. Another solution within the UN would be giving the right to the General Assembly to make decisions and just foregoing the Security Council completely. Now, that is never going to happen. It is too utopian. It doesn't suit the global powers' interest to have everyone have an equal say. But with all that said, however inefficient it is, how it's failing, and you can argue that it is failing a lot of people, especially from regions of the world that are particularly targeted and that are of particular interest to global superpowers. If the UN is abolished and it loses financing, 100 million people will starve. So perhaps it is us who should change the way we look at these institutions. So we do not look at the UN as an institution that is going to stop wars, even though that was its decision. It was its mission when it was founded. But we should look at it as a large global humanitarian organization that ensures that the people who are at most risk get education, that they get food, that they get clothing, that there are refugee areas organized in the region where there are crises, etc. Now, the ICC is a different matter. It is probably the last major legal institution in the world that is at least trying. The ICC has done a good job, though not an imperfect job, but it has done a good job. If you look back on the trials about Rwanda and former Yugoslavia, now of course there are issues with certain countries abandoning it and leaving the membership behind because they realized they could be prosecuted as well. Also now with these accusations against Israel and Netanyahu, now there are accusations on the other side against the chief prosecutor, Karim Khan. We won't know whether the accusations of harassment are true or not, but it is the timing of that accusation is certainly curious. So the ICC is definitely there to at least listen to the complaints of the mainly countries from the global south who are now trying to go after these major powers. Whether that is going to be successful or not, we'll see. But it is a very, very much necessary institution that is still comprised of all of these countries who, if they don't comply, and Netanyahu comes to their territory, and they don't comply and don't get him arrested, that is not the fault of the ICC. It is the fault of countries that are refusing to obey and abide by the international law.
Thank you. All right. Now let me welcome from New York, Mr. Earl Carr Jr. He's a geopolitical analyst focused on NATO and transatlantic. That was a geopolitical analyst and CEO of CJPA Global Advisors. He's also an author, From Trump to Biden and Beyond, Reimagining U.S.-China Relations. Hello, sir, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Earl. I would like to ask you a question that many actually are concerned about, the fact that the war has cost the U.S. about $25 billion US, and we have CNN reporting the real figure could be closer to 40 and 50 billion US once the base damage is included, and also the depletion of the stockpiles that the United States used to have. How do you reconcile the claim when we're hearing these reports that it is just a limited war with these numbers? And can the U.S. sustain this pace if the war drags on?
It's a great question, and thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, as you indicated, we're spending almost $1.8 billion on this war. We've had significant damage to neighboring countries like Qatar that is estimated to last almost 3 to 4 years rebuilding. So it's being harder to defend the administration's notion that this is a limited war, given the significant impact that countries such as Qatar damaged to Saudi Arabia. But more importantly, the facts remain that the Strait of Hormuz is still effectively closed. And that has caused significant prices with respect to the price of oil here in the United States. So oil, you saw at the pump almost $4 in New Jersey and neighboring states. You saw inflationary pressures continue to rise in other countries. So this limited war, which the administration said And I believe their first response was about 3 or 4 weeks, months, 60 days into the war. And we're seeing increasingly tensions as well as concern, both with members in Congress. A lot of people, local Americans here, not knowing when we will see inflationary prices go down. More in addition, we've saw OPEC, the UAE withdraw from OPEC recently, which caused a huge spike in gas prices. So it's as I mentioned, it's being harder to justify that this is a limited war.
Yes, and since you mentioned the oil prices, Mr. Earl Carr, oil is not the only thing that is up. Fuel prices are rising, inflation is back, and consumer confidence is falling. So, according to you, and as many raised these questions, are we really heading toward the 1970s style stagflation shock? And could this actually shape the 2026 elections before any military outcome is actually reached?
It's a great question. And I think this is fundamentally what everyone is watching right now. As we head into midterm elections, we see Republicans increasingly concerned that this will hurt them in the midterm elections. You've already seen a number of Republicans come out, and even the Secretary of Energy, each time he has said, "Oh, we don't expect gas prices to come down anytime shortly," and then you see President Trump contradict him, saying that, "Oh, that's not true. Oil prices could decline, very, very shortly." There seems to be a disconnect with reality, as well as the narrative that the Trump administration is trying to project. The reality is that oil prices will not be decreasing anytime soon, even if the war in Iran ends and if the Strait of Hormuz opens. And that has been widely acknowledged by experts both in the United States and abroad. And I think that's coupled with other inflationary pressures plus aspects that this has with the global economy, such as fertilizer being able to get through the Strait of Hormuz, helium. All of these will disproportionately impact developing economies. And it's really important that we understand that factor.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Earl, do you think that Americans in the United States are aware of the many analyses that we are getting, at least here in the global south, let's say, that the one really driving the bus in this war is not the United States. The United States is waging this for the interest of its foreign ally, Israel.
It's a great question, and you saw former Secretary of State under the Biden administration. You also saw under Barack Obama that Israel had tried several times to encourage the United States to attack Iran, and under multiple U.S. presidents, they declined to with Israel do a joint attack precisely because the concern was about how Iran could respond in closing the Strait of Hormuz. And so, what we have now is the worst of all situations. Number one, the United States, in concert with Israel, attacked Iran, and Iran effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which now we do not have regime change. We have the current regime. We have oil prices spiking. And then we have the United States begging and cajoling its European allies to join and help them with the Strait of Hormuz in safeguarding and trying to open, where NATO is a defensive pact and organization. I think President Trump doesn't quite understand how the nature of NATO works. As a defensive entity, you cannot unilaterally use NATO when you are attacking a country in the Middle East, such as Iran. And you have Germany now pushing back The German Prime Minister said that the United States had no strategy whatsoever. You have our allies in Asia, South Korea, Japan, and other economies like Taiwan really hurting with not being able to get oil prices and then being able to have to cut back on things like electricity. So you almost have the worst of all situations at the present moment.
Thank you, indeed, Mr. Earl Carr Jr. Now, as we are wrapping up, I would like to have very brief endgame scenario from every single one of you. And let's begin with Victor F. Bruno. We have a ceasefire under strain and a blockade still in place, and no real sign that either side is really ready to climb down. What are the likely endgame scenarios? But briefly, please.
Well, I think that, as I said in my previous answer, I don't see an end to this war right now. I really don't. This war will go on and on until both sides are bled dry, because for Iran, it cannot end with a US blockade, and worse, with Israel as a unified political entity. It cannot end with America being able to pressure the country and what that will eventually do is that we will have a number of great powers in Eurasia. You have Turkey, you have Iran, you have India, you have China, and you have Russia. That's five
So
countries.
we're talking about a
limited
multipolar world, right?
Exactly, that's exactly it. With a diminished West in diminished position, and I would also say that we should keep a very close eye on Europe as Germany rearms and as the US pulls back from NATO, because that will be an entire different situation that is correlated with this war. As Mr. Carr just said, the German chancellor just said that America has been humiliated in Iran and has no strategy whatsoever. Those are very strong words, and they signal a very different world, a world I call in my writing the new 19th century.
Thank you. And Yelena Novakov, quickly, please, how do you yourself see this war ending? Do you think it's going to be a frozen conflict? There's going to be a sudden escalation or something else?
Right, to Mr. Bruno's point, Trump had previously said that he wants a multipolar world, and this is definitely an interesting way of obtaining just that. So, yes, and I...
Well, it seems we're having a connection issue with you. Yes, finish up.
All right, so Iran is not coming from an economically strong point, but if it can wait until again American midterms and the Republicans are pushed out, America might be forced out of the war. Now again, that leaves Europe and it leaves China to get different deals with Iran. But effectively, in terms of allyship, in terms of weaponry, both Iran and the US have lost. But in terms of allies, in terms of PR, in terms of trust in America as an ally, the US has lost this war.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. And now, Mr. Massimiliano D'Amore, quickly, who, according to you, can realistically break this deadlock?
That's a very good question. Right now, I cannot provide you an answer, but I would like to shed light on one element that is being overlooked by media headlines, which is the process of radicalization of the Iranian regime. I see a dead end in these negotiations because the decision making is nearly completely controlled and led by General Ahmad Vahidi. but controls near exclusive access to the supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei, and figures like Galibaf and Pezeshkian have declared that Argachi is acting under complete leadership and control of the Pasdaran. And so we could say the pragmatist current has been completely absorbed by the IRGC, but maintain a very strong red line also in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, in terms of right of a sovereign state, not as a mere tool for belligerency operations. Therefore, I cannot see a near end of this negotiation.
Thank you, and we must leave it there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. My thanks to Massimiliano D'Amore in Rotterdam, Earl A. Carr Jr. in New York, Victor F. Bruno in Parnaíba, and Yelena Novakov in Belgrade. So after 66 days, the picture is quite clear. A war declared terminated in a letter to lawmakers, yet unresolved in every serious sense. A blockade squeezing global commerce, international law under pressure, and allies divided, and millions are paying the price in higher costs, lost livelihoods, and broken futures. Whether this ceasefire becomes a bridge to real diplomacy or the opening of a wider and more dangerous phase is the question that will be defined by the weeks ahead. For All 24 News, thanks for watching, and until next time, do take care.